Shalom and welcome. This episode will cover the question, what is Abraham and the ancient Israelites' Y DNA haplogroup? We will specifically speak from the perspective of the paternal descendants of Abraham, because I'm aware that other lineages and haplogroups could have been among the Israelites, but for this video our main goal is to look for the direct bloodline lineage of Abraham and his descendants. What will be their haplogroup? With that being said, what is a Y DNA haplogroup? A Y chromosome is passed down from father to son. According to livingdna.com, titled What Are Haplogroups? It reads, the paternal haplogroup relates to your Y chromosome, and since that is a sex-determining chromosome for men, it is passed down from father to son. This is the perfect tool to use when trying to determine paternal lineages. Therefore, if we're looking for the Y DNA of Abraham and his descendants, we have to use haplogroups. Abraham's Y chromosome would have been passed down to his son Isaac, to his grandson Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, and then the Israelites themselves, who paternally descend from Abraham and will carry his Y DNA haplogroup. With that being said, let's look at the first and one of the best candidates, in my opinion, for Abraham and the Israelites' Y DNA haplogroup. One candidate for Abraham's haplogroup is that he and the Israelites are downstream of E-M78 to E-V22 to E-V12. E-M78 is a downstream of E-M35/E-M215. Abraham could represent a downstream of E-M78. E-V22 and E-V12, which are both downstreams of E-M78. E-V22 and E-V12 have clear links to early Semitic populations like Akkadians in Mesopotamia. Proto-Semites migrated from the Levant into Mesopotamia. Abraham's ancestors would have been part of that migration from the Levant into Mesopotamia. Downstreams of E-M35 likely expanded in the Middle East from the Levant. According to the paper titled Y Chromosome Diversity Characterizes the Gulf of Oman, it reads, the role of the Levant in the Neolithic dispersal of the E3B1-M35 sublineages is supported by the data. So we have populations expanding from the Levant carrying EM35, and according to the paper titled Bayesian Phylogenetic Analysis of Semitic Languages Identifies an Early Bronze Age Origin of Semitic in the Near East, and it reads, we estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin approximately 5,750 years before present in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. So we have Semitic populations expanding from the Levant into Mesopotamia. And according to the paper titled How Eurasia Was Born, it reads, the most plausible candidates for Semitic remigration to the Fertile Crescent, with TMRCAs, the most common recent ancestors, fitting the arrival of the Akkadians and other early Semitic peoples, are certain subclades of both E-V22 and E-V12, with relatively early TMRCAs present in the Middle East could be candidates for such remigration, such as E-FGC143A2, TMRCAs 2200 BCE, and E-V3262, TMRCAs 2600 BCE. So we have an expansion of Semites from the Levant carrying E markers into Mesopotamia. With that being said, there are major Israelite lineages within E-M78. E-V22, a downstream of E-M78. From this lineage comes the Samaritan Kohen family that claim the tribe of Levi, and E-V12, a downstream of E-M78. From this lineage comes the Lora rabbinical family that claim the tribe of Judah, oldest family tree tracing back to King David. Arguably, the most famous Israelite tribes and the most important, Judah and Levi, belong to Haplogroup E, specifically E-M78. According to the paper titled Y DNA research studies of rabbinical lineages and their importance to Jewish genealogy, it reads, "The Lora rabbinical lineage has one of the oldest family trees in the world, claiming to trace back at least to King David, born circa 1037 BCE. The first Lora in the lineage was Rabbi Aaron Lora, circa 1400 through 1480, who married Miriam Shapira, the daughter of Rabbi Shlomo Shapiro, the founder of the Shapiro rabbinical lineage. The predicted haplogroup to which the two pedigreed Lora descendants belong is E-M35. The previous nomenclature for this haplogroup, E1B1B1, was cited for Lora's descendants of rabbinical Jericho Lora, circa 1435 through 1490. And according to JewishDNA.net, two Ashkenazi E1B-V12 groups come from Iberia. The Greek person has a surname Ashkenazi and is probably from Ashkenazi origin. The FTDNA Lora project has several descendants from the line Lora, as reported on encyclopedia.com. The information on this and other sites gives Samson Lora, born near the Westland Sea 1325 and became rabbi in Erfurt. This branch is in the E1B-V12 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Ashkenazi branches. And according to DavidicDynasty.com, which records all of the Davidic genealogies, it reads, "The Lora Legacy, the House of Davidic Royal Descent by Nell Rosenstein, compiles the sources for Rashi and hence Davidic descent of the major rabbinic families through the Lora family. The Lora family is a very ancient family, tracing its roots back through Rashi and Hillel to King David. Therefore, we have a potential bloodline that can trace all the way back to King David, carrying haplogroup E, specifically a downstream of E-M78. Therefore, we can begin with David, going back to David, to Judah, to Jacob, to Isaac, and Abraham. Abraham would therefore be a downstream of E-M78. Now let's move to the tribe of Levi. The priestly Kohen lineage from the tribe of Levi, the biggest and most important Samaritan family, the Kohen family tradition tribe of Levi, was found to belong to haplogroup E. This article predated the change of the classification of haplogroup E3b1-M78 to E3b1a-M78, and the further subdivision of E3b1a-M78 into 6 subclades based on the research of Cruciani et al. And according to JewishDNA.net, the owner of this kit reports himself as Kohen, tribe of Levi, Israelite Samaritan. This branch is in the E1B-V22 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Samaritan branches. Therefore, beginning with the Samaritan Kohen family with the tradition tribe of Levi, we go from Aaron to Amram to Kohath to Levi to Jacob to Isaac to Abraham. Abraham would therefore be a downstream of E-M78. E-M78 is widespread across the world, but its highest frequency is in the Middle East, the Mediterranean, Africa, and Europe. E-V12 also shares a decent distribution in the Middle East and the Mediterranean. E-V22 also shares a decent distribution in the Middle East and the Mediterranean. And also remember, E-M78 is a downstream of E-M35 and E-M215. Many Jewish populations have clear links to E-M35 and E-M215 in general, being dubbed a major founding lineage and Afro-Asiatic. According to the paper titled Y-DNA Genetic Signature of the Savran Bendori Hasidic Dynasty, it reads, "Essential to determining the unique Y-DNA signature of a particular rabbinical lineage is the terminal single nucleotide polymorphism, SNP, which defines the haplogroup to which descendants of the lineage belong, in addition to having a high percentage of standard Y-DNA markers or short tandem repeat allele values in common another Y-DNA characteristic that all descendants of the Wertham-Gitterman rabbinical lineage share is that they all belong to the E-L117 haplogroup. The E-L117 haplogroup was previously known as E-M35 and has also been referred to in the literature as E1B1B1. According to the International Society of Genetic Genealogy, ISOGG, and National Geographic's Geographic Project, E1B1B1 may have arisen instead in the Near East or the Middle East and then expanded into the Mediterranean with the spread of agriculture. Haplogroup E-M35, which accounts for approximately 18 to 20% of Ashkenazi and 8.6% to 30% of Sephardi Y chromosomes, appears to be one of the major founding lineages of the Jewish population. E-M35 has also been observed in moderate numbers among individuals from Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Samaritan communities, having traditions of descending from the tribe of Levi, suggesting that E1B1B1 men claiming to be Levites may have existed in Israel before the diaspora of 70 CE. With that being said, Haplogroup E seems to be an excellent candidate for Abraham, and remember, it's not just Jews with Haplogroup E, but also there are plenty of Arab populations that also carry Haplogroup E, who would be the cousins to the Jews. But overall, E-M78 seems to be a good candidate that could represent the downstream that Abraham could have had, including the Israelites and related populations, like the Arabs. With that being said, I believe that Abraham and the Israelites would carry Haplogroup E. Abraham and the Israelites would be a specific downstream within E-M78. Abraham could be within E-V22 or E-V12. Abraham could even be a basal E-M78 and therefore could produce both E-V12 and E-V22 and all other subclades within E-M78. But for now, I believe Abraham and the Israelites belong to Haplogroup E. The way this can work on a chart, and by the way, I did not make this chart, but Shem could represent Haplogroup DE. Then from Shem to Eber, Eber could represent E-P2, which produces both E1B1A and E1B1B. Peleg could represent E-M35, and then Serg or Ru could represent E-M78. Then Serg could possibly represent E-V22 or E-V12. And then from Serg to Abraham, Abraham would basically be a downstream of E-M78. Abraham, the Israelites, the Ishmaelites, and all other groups that descend from Abraham are downstreams of E-M78. Abraham and the Israelites could be a downstream of E-M78. Pre-pottery Neolithic B populations in the Jordan of the Levant carried E-M78. This is important because Levantine populations in the Neolithic, such as the Natufians, are the ancestors of Semitic populations. According to the book titled In Hot Pursuit of Language in Prehistory, it reads, "This paper makes an additional inference, since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant." And according to Cambridge, it reads, "Given the modern distribution of Semitic languages over the area in question, which belong to the larger Afro-Asiatic family, it seems appropriate to suggest that these first farmers of the Levant and their Mesolithic predecessors, including the Natufian culture, were speaking a Proto-Afro-Asiatic language. It may be that Proto-Semitic continued to develop within the Levant and Syria area, since both Ebelite and Akkadian early Semitic languages are there attested, earlier the former around 2400 BCE. Abraham, being a Semite, is likely a descendant of Natufian populations. Therefore, Abraham could descend from the Natufian with E-M78. One method we can use to determine the haplogroup of Abraham, and therefore the Israelites, is by looking at people today who claim descent from the 12 tribes of Israel. However, not just claim descent, but also have family records going all the way back to key figures in the Torah. The Samaritans in Israel, from the family of Kohen, the tribe of Levi, trace their lineage back to the Levites. These Kohen Samaritans never left the land of Israel, and they have E-M78. Demographic investigations of the Samaritan community were carried out in the 1960s. Detailed pedigrees of the 13 generations show that the Samaritans comprise 4 lineages, one of them being our main focus, the priestly Kohen lineage from the tribe of Levi. Recently, several genetic studies on the Samaritan population were made using haplogroup comparisons as well as wide genome genetic studies. The biggest and most important Samaritan family, the Kohen family, tradition, tribe of Levi, was found to belong to Haplogroup E. This article predated the change of the classification of Haplogroup E-V22-M78 to E-V12-M78, and the further subdivision of E-V21A-M78 into 6 subclades based on the research of Cruciani et al. According to Britannica, Samaritan, member of a community now nearly extinct that claims to be related by blood to those Israelites of ancient Samaria, who were not deported by the Assyrian conquerors of the Kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE. According to the genetic paper titled Reconstruction of Patrilineages and Matrilineages of Samaritans and Other Israeli Populations from Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA sequences variation, it reads, Haplogroup E3b1, defined by M78, was found in all 9 populations at frequencies of 10 through 16.7%. The Samaritan family, Kohen, carries this haplotype. A study was conducted on the Samaritans, and there are 4 Samaritan families who all claim different origins. However, it's the Kohen Samaritan family. This specific family is the one that claims to be from the tribe of Levi, and that Samaritan family has haplogroup E, specifically E-M78. According to the genetic paper titled Genetics and the History of the Samaritans, Y chromosomal microsatellites and genetic affinities between Samaritans and Kohanim, and it reads, the Samaritans are a group of some 750 indigenous Middle Eastern people, about half of whom live in Holon, a suburb of Tel Aviv, and the other half live near Nablus. The results support the position of the Samaritans that they are descendants of the tribes of Israel dating to before the Assyrian exile in 722 through 720 BCE, in correspondence with previous published single nucleotide polymorphism haplotypes. Each Samaritan family, with the exception of the Samaritan Kohen lineage, was observed to carrying a distinctive Y chromosome short tandem repeat haplotype that was not more than 1 mutation removed from the 6 marker Kohen model haplotype. In the Table 1 chart, it shows Kohen 1 and Kohen 2, and they have E3b, specifically E-M78. Kohen 1 and Kohen 2 are E-M78. And remember, Kohen, tribe of Levi. Furthermore, if you look on Family Tree DNA titled Jewish E Project Y-DNA chart, you will see at the top the first sample is Israelite Samaritan tribe of Levi, and its haplogroup is haplogroup E, specifically E-FT161981. That specific subclade of E-M78 that the Samaritans have is found in the Jordan and Israel/Palestine, specifically Amman, Jordan, and specifically Palestine of nebulous. So E-FT161981 is definitely a Levantine haplogroup in the land of Israel and Jordan, exclusively restricted to this region and not seen anywhere else. Since the Samaritans carry E-M78 and claim the tribe of Levi, you could make the argument that if it goes back to that lineage, going back to Aaron, to Amram, to Kohath, to Levi, and then from Levi to Jacob, to Isaac, to Abraham. Abraham would represent a downstream of E-M78. Charts have been made to illustrate how this would work. Shem would be haplogroup DE, and then from Shem to Eber would be haplogroup E-P2 or E1B1, which can produce both E1B1A and E1B1B. Then Peleg or Ru would be E-M35, founding Jewish lineage. Then Ru or Serg will be E-M78, Abraham's lineage. And then all the way down to Abraham in 2000 BCE, he would be a downstream of E-M78. By the way, I didn't make this chart, but it is an interesting representation as to how Abraham could be E-M78. With that being said, Abraham and the Israelites would be E-M78, a downstream of it, basing this off of the Samaritan Kohan lineage of the tribe of Levi, and the Samaritan population has 100% haplogroup E. However, not just them, but also their Semitic cousins such as Arabs in Egypt, Arabs in the Jordan, Arabs in Palestine, etc. Haplogroup E-M78 is widespread throughout Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean, and this lineage makes up a decent percentage in Israel today. With that being said, Abraham and the Israelites could represent downstream of E-M78. Abraham and the Israelites could be a downstream of E-V22. If Abraham is E-V22, then it's likely that he could descend from Akkadians and early Semitic populations that migrated into Mesopotamia from the Levant. According to the paper titled How Eurasia Was Born, it reads, "The most plausible candidates for Semitic remigration to the Fertile Crescent, with TMRCAs, the most common recent ancestors, fitting the arrival of the Akkadians and other early Semitic peoples, are certain subclades of both E-V22 and E-V12 with relatively early TMRCAs present in the Middle East could be candidates for such remigration, such as E-FGC14382, TMRCA is 2200 BCE, and E-V3262, TMRCA is 2600 BCE. Therefore, Abraham and his Semitic ancestors could have been E-V22, who would have left the Levant and went into Mesopotamia. According to the genetic paper titled Bayesian Phylogenetic Analysis of Semitic Languages Identifies an Early Bronze Age Origin of Semitic in the Near East, and it reads, "We estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin, approximately 5,750 years before present, in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia." So with all that being said, Abraham would descend from an E-V22 lineage that left the Levant and migrated into Mesopotamia, like other Proto-Semites and downstreams of haplogroup E. This would mean that the Israelites would paternally be E-V22. Modern Jewish populations do in fact carry E-V22. According to the webpage Eupedia titled Haplogroup E1B1B, it reads, E-V22 is found primarily in western Ethiopia, northern Egypt, and in the southern Levant. In Europe, it is therefore associated with the Phoenicians and the Jews. The Phoenicians could have disseminated E-V22 to Sicily, Sardinia, southern Spain, and the Maghreb, and the Jews too, to Greece and mainland Italy and Spain. According to the website titled JewishDNA.net, Jewish group of branches E1B-V22, it reads, "The Jewish branches can be grouped according to their Y DNA characteristics. These characteristics are often related to a period between 10,000 YBP through 4,000 YBP. Some branches had a founding father effect in the period outside the Middle East, which gives information on the location of their ancestor at the time of the founding father. For other branches, it is more likely that the ancestors were in the Middle East, where in most cases no founding father effect took place and population growth was continuous. An overview of the Jewish groups of branches is present. Two likely origins for the Jewish V22 groups exist from Egypt or from Mesopotamia. Both areas are known to have V22 populations and large Jewish communities. And here is a chart showing the Jewish branches within E-V22. So now let's take a look at some of these branches and read the information dealing with them. On your own time, you can click all of the links and read about each E-V22. This branch has only one close branch according to Penelia. It consists of a few British and Dutch persons at about 1,700 years before present. A next branch is more than 3,300 years before present, away with people from a large region: Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, Southern Europe, and Western Europe. In 2022, several people have done NGS, next generation sequencing. The old E-V22 has a history as described on EV22.net. It originates in southern Egypt. The exchange of people between Egypt and the Levant is old, older than the start of Judaism. This branch has a large Ashkenazi and a smaller Sephardic branch. Whether the first Jewish people in this branch became Jewish in the Levant or in Egypt cannot yet be determined. This branch is in the E1B-V22 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Ashkenazi branches. This branch is a member of the Sephardic branches. This branch has some matches that might be related to the start of Judaism. If you look on Y heat map and type in E-V22, you will see that it's distributed throughout the Mediterranean as well as in the Middle East, and it is seen within the Arabian Peninsula, Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, as well as a very nice and high distribution in the Levant, or the land of Israel. What's also interesting about EV22 is that it's found among the Samaritan Cohen family from the tribe of Levi. According to Jewish Y-DNA branch, the owner of this kit reports himself as Cohen, tribe of Levi, Israelite Samaritan. This branch is in the E1B-V22 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Samaritan branches. Others are 149532 from an Israelite Samaritan tribe of Levi, Itmir, born Aaron Cohen. This branch is in the E1B-V22 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Sephardic branches. So as I stated before, EV22 is found heavily within Mesopotamia or modern-day Iraq, as well as in modern-day Israel, specifically among Jewish populations. EV22 is actually a downstream of E-M78. Therefore, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and Levi could be a downstream of EV22, the priestly Cohen lineage from the tribe of Levi. The biggest and most important Samaritan family, the Cohen family, tradition, tribe of Levi, was found to belong to Haplogroup E. This article predated the change to the classification of Haplogroup E3b1-M78 to E3b1a-M78, and the further subdivision of E3b1a-M78 into 6 subclades based on research of Cruciani et al. According to Britannica, Samaritan member, a community now nearly extinct that claims to be related by blood to those Israelites of ancient Samaria who were not deported by the Assyrian conquerors of the Kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE. And according to reconstruction of patrilineages and matrilineages of Samaritans and other Israeli populations from Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA sequence variation, it reads, Haplogroup E3b1, defined by M78, was found in all 9 populations at frequencies of 10 through 16.7%. The Samaritan family, Cohen, carries this haplotype. And if you go to Jewish E Project, formerly Jewish E3B Project, Y DNA Classic Chart, you'll see Israelite Samaritan Tribe of Levi, Aaron, Israel as haplogroup E-FT161981. But with all that being said, Jews aren't the only Middle Eastern population with E-V22. Many Arabs also carry E-V22, which makes a lot of sense because of Ishmael. If you type in Y full Y tree E-V22, you'll see a very high distribution of E-V22 in the Arabian Peninsula among Arab populations. Also, if you type in SNP tracker, you'll see an even distribution of E-V22 in both the Arabian Peninsula and the Middle East, as well as the Mediterranean. And the dispersion point for E-V22 and all its descendants is again within the Levant, the homeland of Semitic populations. So plenty of Arab and Jewish populations carry haplogroup E, and Abraham could be a downstream of haplogroup E-V22. The Israelites would be from this lineage. Therefore, here's one way you can look at things. Shem would be haplogroup DE, then from Shem to Eber will be haplogroup E-P2, which can produce both E1B1A and E1B1B. Then Peleg or Ru would be haplogroup E-M35, and then from Peleg and Ru to Serg and Nahor, they will either produce E-M78, and then from E-M78 we'll have E-V22, and Abraham will be a downstream of E-V22. Therefore, with all of that being said, Abraham and the Israelites could have been a downstream of E-V22. Abraham and the Israelites could be a downstream of E-V12. If Abraham is E-V12, then it's likely that he could be an Akkadian. If not Akkadian, then perhaps descendants of other early Semitic people in general. According to the paper How Eurasia Was Born, it reads, the most plausible candidates for Semitic remigration to the Fertile Crescent, with TMRCAs, the most common recent ancestors, fitting the arrival of the Akkadians and other early Semitic peoples, are certain subclades of both E-V22 and E-V12, with relatively early TMRCAs present in the Middle East, could be candidates for such remigration, such as E-FGC14382, TMRCAs 2200 BCE, and E-V3262, TMRCAs 2600 BCE. According to the Bayesian phylogenetic analysis of Semitic languages identifies an early Bronze Age origin of Semitic in the Near East, it reads, we estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin approximately 5,750 years before present in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. So Abraham would descend from an E-V12 lineage that left the Levant and migrated into Mesopotamia, like other Proto-Semites, and would have been a downstream of haplogroup E. This would mean that the Israelites would paternally be E-V12, and modern Jewish populations do in fact carry E-V12. According to JewishDNA.net, Jewish group of branches E1B-V12, it reads, the Jewish branches can be grouped according to their Y DNA characteristics. These characteristics are often related to a period between 10,000 years before present through 4,000 years before present. Some branches had a founding father effect in that period outside the Middle East, which gives information to the location of their ancestor at the time of the founding father. For other branches, it is more likely that the ancestors were in the Middle East, where, in most cases, no founding father effect took place and population growth was continuous. An overview of the Jewish groups of branches is present. V12 has two major subgroups, V32 in the south or Arabia and CTS 693 in the area of Mesopotamia. All branches below are from the CTS 693 area, Mesopotamia. It seems likely that this is the area they became Jewish. So here are the branches in this group, the ones in Mesopotamia, the ones that are Jewish. E-V12 is distributed throughout the Middle East. There are various Mizrahi who are Middle Eastern Jews with E-V12, but E-V12 is also found in Ashkenazi and Sephardic populations as well, with their common ancestor living before the start of Judaism, 3,300 to 3,700 years before present. This would be around the time of the Bronze Age when Abraham lived. Could this common ancestor be Abraham? This branch is in the E-V12 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Mizrahi branches. The STR dataset of this branch is limited. No NGS test is known. It is possible that this branch is a shared ancestor with AB-141 after the start of Judaism. This branch is in the E-V12 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Mizrahi branches. In the Sephardic page of FTDNA, we find 122368 and 89104, both from Iraq, but less than 67 markers, close to E1B-V12, YB8540. The shared ancestor SNP is at least CTS 6667, which is 3,300 years before present on yfull.com. Likely that the shared ancestor is more recent and they share a Jewish ancestor. This branch is in the E1B-V12 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Ashkenazi branches. This branch is a member of the Sephardic branches. This branch has some matches that might be related after the start of Judaism. This branch from Sephardic origin has several Jewish persons in Iraq and Turkey. In 2019, we have Spanish and Sephardic descendants in this branch with different surnames in both groups and STR distances that indicate a TMRCA, the most common recent ancestor, of more than 500 years and less than 1,000 years. This branch has a shared ancestor in YFull CTS 8411 and FTDNA with two other branches. This SNP is about 3,700 years before present and has another Jewish branch and an Irish branch. It is most likely that CTS 8411 was in the Levant, and 3 descendant lines are measured. One left to the Ashkenazi countries, one went to Spain being Jewish, and one ended up in Ireland. In Spain, a few descendants left Iberia as Sephardic Jews, and a few others became Catholic and remained in Iberia. The next closest member in YFull are 2 persons from Sardinia. Given the history of Sardinia and the Levant, one could speculate that they arrived in Sardinia in the Phoenician period. This branch is in the E1B-V12 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Sephardic branches. Interestingly enough, we see that the Lora rabbinical family has one of the oldest family trees in the world, tracing their lineage back to King David, has E-V12. 2 Ashkenazi E1B-V12 groups came possibly from Iberia. The Greek person has a surname, Ashkenazi, and is probably from Ashkenazi origin. The FTDNA Lora project has several descendants from the line Lora, as reported on encyclopedia.com. The information on this site and other sites gives Samson Lora, born near the Windsensee 1325 and became rabbi in Erfurt. This branch is in the E1B-V12 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Ashkenazi branches. According to the paper titled Why DNA Research Studies of Rabbinical Lineages and Their Importance to Jewish Genealogy, it reads, the Lora rabbinical family has one of the oldest family trees in the world. claiming to trace back at least to King David, born circa 1037 BCE. The first Lora in the lineage was Rabbi Aaron Lora, circa 1400 through 1480, who married Miriam Shapira, the daughter of Rabbi Shlomo Shapira, the founder of the Shapira rabbinical lineage. The predicted haplogroup to which the two pedigreed Lora descendants belong is E-M35. The previous nomenclature for this haplogroup, E1b1b1, was cited for Lora's descendants, the Rabbi Jekel Lora, circa 1435 through 1490. There's a great book on this family titled The Lora Legacy, the House of Davidic Royal Descent, and it reads, "The author of The Unbroken Chain has just written another major work, this time about one of the most distinguished Jewish families, Lora. It is a very ancient family, tracing its roots back through Rashi and Hillel to King David. The family is known throughout history for its extraordinary achievements in science, philosophy, theology, and the arts. The book is a comprehensive study of the Lora family that includes 45 pages of family trees showing the relationship of the Lora family to such other families. Even if you go to the DavidicDynasty.com, where they trace and keep the records of people who have descent from King David, it reads, The Lora Legacy, the House of Davidic Royal Descent by Nell Rosenstein compiles the sources of Rashi and hence Davidic descent of major rabbinic families through the Lora family. The Lora family is a very ancient family, tracing its roots back to Rashi and Hillel to King David. If you go to Family Tree DNA titled The Lora DNA Project Y-DNA Classic Chart, you will find that most are haplogroup E, with a minor J and R. The Lora DNA Project Y-DNA Classic Chart. For genealogy within the most recent 15 generations, STR markers help define paternal lineages. Y-DNA STR markers change, mutate, often enough that most men who share the same STR results also share a recent paternal lineage. This page displays Y chromosome DNA, Y-DNA STR results for the project. It uses the classic format. The columns display each project member's kit number, paternal ancestry information according to project settings, the paternal tree branch haplogroup, and actual STR marker results. So here are a few screenshots of the Lora rabbinical family's DNA, and when it comes to their E markers, and you can just look it up yourself and see all the various E markers under the Lora rabbinical family. This is fascinating because if the Lora rabbinical family traces their lineage back to King David, King David's lineage traces back to Judah, then Judah to Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, meaning Abraham is E-V12, and paternally Israelites are E-V12. Abraham would represent a specific downstream of E-V12. Therefore, the way this could work is Shem is haplogroup DE, then Eber is haplogroup E-P2, which can produce both E1b1a and E1b1b. Peleg or Ru would be E-M35, then Ru or Serg would be E-M78, then Serg or Nahor would be E-V12, and then all the way from Serg to Abraham, he would be a downstream of E-V12. With that being said, Abraham and the Israelites could be E-V12. E-M78 is the second best candidate for Abraham and the Israelites. The Israelites would represent some subclade of E-M78. The reason I say this is because the Samaritan Levites in Israel carry this haplogroup, as well as the Lora rabbinical family who claim descent from King David and have one of the oldest family trees in the world also descends from E-M78. According to the paper titled Why DNA Research Studies of Rabbinical Lineages and Their Importance to Jewish Genealogy, reads, the Lora rabbinical lineage has one of the oldest family trees in the world, claiming to trace back at least to King David, born circa 1037 BCE. The first Lora in the lineage was Rabbi Aaron Lora, circa 1400 through 1480, who married Miriam Pura, the daughter of Rabbi Shlomo Pura, the founder of the Shapiro rabbinical lineage. The predicted haplogroup to which the two pedigreed Lora descendants belong is E-M35. The previous nomenclature for this haplogroup, E1b1b1, was cited for Lora's descendants of Rabbi Jerichel Lora, circa 1435 through 1490. And according to JewishDNA.net, the FTDNA Lora project has several descendants from the line Lora, as reported on encyclopedia.com. The information on this and other sites gives Samson Lora, born near Westlacey 1325, and became rabbi in Erfurt. This branch is in the E-V12 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Ashkenazi branches. And according to Davidic dynasty, which records all the descendants of King David, it reads, The Lora Legacy, the House of Davidic Royal Descent by Nell Rosenstein, compiles the sources for Rashi and hence Davidic descent of the major rabbinic families through the Lora family. The Lora family is a very ancient family, tracing its roots back through Rashi and Hillel to King David. Now for the Levites. The priestly Kohen lineage from the tribe of Levi, the biggest and most important Samaritan family, the Kohen family, tradition, tribe of Levi, was found to belong to Haplogroup E. This article predated the change of the classification of Haplogroup E3b1-M78 to E3b1a-M78, and the further subdivision of E3b1a-M78 into 6 subclades based on the research of Cruciani et al. And according to JewishDNA.net, it says, the owner of this kit reports himself as Kohen, tribe of Levi, Israelite Samaritan. This branch is in the E1b-V22 group of Jewish branches. This branch is a member of the Samaritan branches. Therefore, Abraham could be a downstream of E-M78, either E-V22 or E-V12. If you type in S&P tracker E-M78, you see a distribution of E-M78 in the Middle East, specifically the Arabian Peninsula, the Arabs, but also in the Mediterranean and Europe with the Jews. And the split occurs in the Levant, which is where the Ishmaelites and Israelites were located. With that being said, E-M78 is the second best candidate I have for Abraham and therefore the Israelites.